Hi, everybody. Wishing all of you a very good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday afternoon. We're more than excited to be taking up this topic with you, diploma versus degree. I know this has increasingly become a very difficult choice to make because on either side there are a lot of benefits and advantages. And I think more often than not now, when you take up so many diplomas, uh, yeah, I mean, there's such a wide portfolio of the set of diplomas that you can take now that offer a good salary range, which makes it increasingly difficult to finally make a choice between the two. Canada's got so many diplomas that you can take at almost every frontier, every field of work. So I think I'll help you assess and ascertain today what is going to be a better choice for you to make. Super excited for this. I'm just going to wait for a couple of more minutes for everybody else to turn in and we can start right away. Meanwhile, please feel free to put down your questions. This is going to be less of a slideshow and a monologue-ish space and more of a space where you can ask me any set of questions that you possibly have, and I will answer those for you. Be mindful that the topic for today is that we're trying to ascertain and discern, does a diploma make more sense for the field that you want to do, or does a degree make more sense? I think the choice, I mean, a large part of the choice depends on the objectives. I mean, there's not one better than the other anymore. It all depends on where you want to be uh, from now. I mean, how do, in your experience or in your thought process, uh, what makes more sense can be very different from what makes more sense to me when I look at the next 5 years of my life. So I'll take all of those questions with you. I've already started getting some of the questions. Um, Feel free to ask me anything that you'd like me to answer. I'll wait for another 2 minutes and we can start right away. Just waiting for everybody else to join in. I would request my colleague Arushi to just quickly um, put a reminder message to everybody so we can start ASAP. I just wanted to check with you guys that if you can hear me fine now. I'm not sure. I did hear from someone that the voice is not audible. Can someone just help me reaffirm that you can hear me all fine? Can you? I think now is a great time to start. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. We're going to be covering and talking largely about diploma versus degree. What's going to be a better choice for you? Uh, I think I've got a couple of points listed down, and essentially, as I touch upon each one of them, the better thing or the more important thing to do is that you ask me plenty of questions um, as I cover each point. I'm going to keep this very engaging, very interactive. So I haven't really decided to use any slide deck per se because this is going to be a live Q&A space. Number one, I think, so I will cover some aspects one by one, the aspects that are eventually some of the most orchestrative or influential factors when you finally reach a decision that which level of secondary or which level of post-secondary ed do you finally want to receive. Now, number one being the admissions criteria. Now, when we're looking at diplomas in general, there are two or three kinds of diplomas that we have. What essentially is a diploma is that it's a highly intensive short-term course which gets you very well immersed in a specific skill set or a highly specialized domain. It can be 1 year, it can be 9 months, it can be 2 years, it can be 18 months. It's a short-term course compared to a degree. And you can do it right after grade 10th, you can do it right after grade 12th. You don't really need a post-secondary education just to get into a diploma. You can get into a diploma right after your secondary high school is almost done, and you can get into a diploma. The only thing that diploma requires is that you've got a basic secondary ed fulfilled. And then you can pretty much specialize yourself in one skill like mechanical engineering or civil engineering or XYZ or electronics XYZ. Likewise, how do you define a degree? So while diplomas can be awarded by any college, any private institution which is listed or which has a state registration to it, any university, so any PEI or largely a state HEI or a national HEI. HEI is a higher education institution. PEI is a private education institution, right? So any PEI, any HEI can largely deliver a diploma, whereas a degree typically is only given by universities. And degrees are normally longer. They can range from 3 years to 4 years, sometimes even 5 years. And these involve a lot of research, academia, practice, theory, and a lot of democratized elective component to it, whereas diplomas are very highly intensive on one specialized domain. So this is largely how I define the two. Accessibility or the criteria is point one. Let's talk about a concept where I take Canada as an example. If I were to do a diploma in Canada, how would I choose? Canada essentially is a 16-year model. So students complete their high school and then go for a 4-year typical Canadian bachelor's degree. Now, increasingly, as long as I'm from a 3-year bachelor's degree background, I can enter any diploma. However, I can't really enter any degree. When I go for a master's degree, I am, for some of the best universities in Canada, still it's a mandate for me to have a 4-year bachelor's to be able to get into a master's degree in Canada. Not all the time, but more often than not, you actually need a 4-year bachelor's degree to get into a Canadian master's. In diploma, you don't. For you to enter into a master's degree in Canada, you need sometimes more than 60%. Largely, it's an average of 70 to 80 to get into a good university in Canada for a master's degree. In diploma, as long as you're 60%, you're okay. As long as you're 55 and above, you're okay. But largely, I've seen that Indian students now are expected to have at least 60% marks to get into a Canadian diploma. So that's from the accessibility point of view. Now, a lot of diplomas now are okay with you having gap years as long as you were working. However, in a traditional degree, which is not really relevant to what you've been working on, you cannot get into a degree if you've got a lot of work here, gap years between your last academic qualification and the, and the academic qualification that you aspire to get. So that's from the accessibility or the criteria or the admissions point of view. Marks, less marks, if you want to get into a diploma, you're going to be fine. You don't necessarily always have to get a 4-year degree for you to be able to get into a diploma. But for a master's degree in Canada, for some of the, or in some of the best or most sought after master's schools, you need a 4-year degree. When you talk about the likes of UBC, talk about the likes of McGill, talk about the likes of McMaster's, University of Toronto, you still need all of those. Is there any questions so far? If we get 63%, can we do Masters 2020? No experience? It depends a lot on which Masters. If it's an MBA and you do not have a work experience, the chances are skim. These are slim. It's not always, you need work experience. 63% in your bachelor's now depends if it's a 4-year bachelor's or it's a 3-year bachelor's. Normally, when it's a 3-year bachelor's, the admission criteria in terms of academic marks is very different compared to the admission or the grade criteria when you have a 4-year degree. So these are largely different. So I hope I answered you, Rishikesh. Long story short, you need to check the exact requirement, but after 63%, it depends a lot if you need a PGDM or if you need a master's in a field, or which field are you in? Is it a highly research, academic, theory intensive field, or is it a very specialized skill that you want to go for a diploma in? And I think you will find the answer and as I progress into this webinar further. Um, what are the academic opportunities after diploma in alternative energy technologies and cloud computing and big data? Well, I think these three are, I mean, not really the last two, but the first one is relatively different. So I'm not really sure what you really want to know. But um, essentially, if you guys just could just wait a second, I'll just switch my network. I hope you guys can hear me better now. Uh, for alternative in energy techniques, technologies in cloud computing and BD, I think at large, I'm not an expert with which kind of um, academic or work opportunities do you get in what part of the world. A lot of it depends if you're in Canada or if you're elsewhere. Academically, if you ever want to research or progress academically after either of the two, diploma or degree, is my next point. So I think I'll answer you there. Point number two, so first was criteria, second is progression in terms of career, in terms of employability, in terms of academics. Now, diplomas are highly specialized, skill intensive programs that can range from 9 months to 1 year to 2 years, where after you're done with the diploma, you immediately go for a job. Your pay rates are always going to be lesser, if not equal, than a degree holder. That's almost always the case, always the case. In terms of progression, on the career front, sometimes diploma holders get an entry level job or a mid tier job. And if you're a master's degree holder with sufficient work experience behind you, backing you, you normally can climb up to a higher managerial or leadership role, depending on the ancillary or the auxiliary part of where you're coming from in terms of your background. But at large, in terms of career and jobs, you can get exposed to a high level or high tier progression in your career if you're doing a degree. If it's a diploma, then it's an entry level thing or it's a mid-tier thing, depending, because you're largely delving into a skill more than management or more than an extreme research or thought leadership standpoint of that specific domain. That how experienced are you to build something up, how experienced are you to build a vision around it, how experienced are you to scale it. That essentially depends on a lot of things beyond your academics. I hope you got the point that you're more suitable when you have a degree for a high level role, and which is essentially to almost everywhere you go. Of course, it's subject to what else do you bring with yourself, work experience, and your other auxiliary parts of what you bring. When it comes to a degree, in terms of academics, so supposedly there are two scenarios that we're largely going to be speaking about. One is someone who's done a bachelor's in India, does a postgraduate diploma in Canada. Similarly, I've done a bachelor's in India and I'm going for a master's in Canada. And if I have to go for a teaching role in Canada, I will be picked and not this person because he's a diploma holder, I'm a master's holder. So academic opportunities in terms of research, in terms of doing a doctorate, in terms of getting into a teaching assistantship or a graduate assistantship, that's more likely for a master's degree holder to get. A diploma holder is going to seldom make the cut. In terms of your PR points now, when it comes to progression, you can label this as point number 3 when it comes to the difference between a diploma and a degree. Your PR points. Essentially, anywhere across the world, your PR points are determined by the length of the study more than what kind of study it is. As long as it's a 2-year degree, and if you're doing a diploma or you're doing a degree, it just doesn't matter as long as you're doing it for 2 years. However, here's the caveat. The catch here is if I was applying for a PR in Canada, and I have, so here's someone, person X, here's myself. This person has done a PGDM in Canada for 2 years. I've done a master's for 16 months with 2 years of length. Both of us get the same points. However, I get extra PR points because I'm a master's level applicant for an express entry or a PRship. So while the study in Canada points are similar for both of us, the fact that I'm more qualified in general, I'm a graduate level applicant, I get more points. PGDM will never make the master's, that cut for the category in which we're applying for PR. So I hope I answered you there. Exact opportunities, I wouldn't know, but alternative energy technologies are a big industry now in Canada, in Holland, in Finland, in France, in Germany, in China, in Japan, in Singapore, almost in Australia, in the US. So, but remember, research, if you want to delve into research, always go for a degree, never for a diploma then. So I've covered 3 points. Can I get into an MBA with 2 years of experience? For the most part, yes. A lot of Canadian or a lot of Australian, UK, US schools. So US actually does not really ask for a lot of work experience when you're going for an MBA. They look for relevance in your profile. In Canada, 2 years of experience is mostly the norm when it comes to an MBA. In Germany, 2 years of experience is what they need. In UK, 2 years of work ex is, you're going to be all right. Some of them don't need it, some of them do, so that's going to be okay. In Australia, yes, they do need 2 years experience in the UK. But some universities in Australia also need 3 years of experience. But largely, I think if you're moving to the West, you're going to be okay. I hope I answered you there. What about the 3 years gap in between a 12th and bachelor's? Well, we're on. So for Europe and UK largely take a lot of gap years. We've got programs in Germany now that are not just affordable, as in they're under 10 lakhs, but they take over 8 to 9 gap years between your 12th and bachelor's, because Europe essentially is in need of young talent to fulfill the talent gap or to fulfill the skill shortage gap that they have now more than ever. And they need additional talent pool or international student mobility to fill that. So they take a lot of gap years. Even UK does. Look, gap years is an interesting concept, Vedant. If you're going for Australia, they have this rigorous setup called GTE, a genuine temporary entrant. And if you're going for a bachelor's degree after 12th and you don't really make the cut for the GTE requirements, if you've got gap years that are unexplained. So as a general rule in our industry, gap years are not really gap years until there's a point where you can't explain what the gap years are for. So the most important concept is, can you explain what were you doing? And the justification of your gap years, is it documented or not? So I hope I answered you there. Australia is very strict, extremely strict, but they need a documented proof that you were doing something solid. Germany is super open, France is super open, Holland is super, I mean, Holland is still going to be okay. UK is open for 2 to 3 years of gap. What are the options for a master's diploma program for someone holding a bachelor's degree? Again, I think, let me explain to you in this manner. In something like interior design, A diploma sometimes is better because it's a very highly specialized skill. And interior design, while it's a conceptual and um, art-based field work, which has a creative side to it, but also a conceptual side to it, theoretical side to it. It's something that's very dynamic as a field of work. You study about contemporary ways of doing it, you study about modern ways of doing it, you see hybrid ways of doing it. And so that's better done on a diploma, if I may say so. Architecture is essentially more of theory, practice, um, has proven methodologies, theoretical practices attached to it. And I would rather recommend that you do an M.Arch degree because it has a lot of comprehensive theory, practice, internships, research, all of it. So architecture, of course, is a very broad field, right? So M.Arch is better because you need a lot of theory to it. You need a lot of research methodology to it. You need a lot of general conceptual clarity to it. Interior design or certain subsets of arc is still something that's very dynamic and can be shortened depending on what field you're looking at. I think because there's so many questions, I can pick up one right now and then I'll pick up the ones after this. What is the better degree? Which is the best degree or diploma if someone wants to go to the US? So here's my standard answer to it. So in Australia, Canada, UK, US, anywhere you go in the world, there's always a skill occupation list or a skill migration list that these countries have where they say that, look, here's the talent gap in the country. Here's the kind of courses that we have attributable to those. And if you're coming to Australia or Canada or the US with these kind of skill set, more often than not, you'll find a good employability. So in the US, STEM has a big and large opportunity, employability, and various study options. STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, covering engineering, physics, statistics, mathematics, medicine, so many different things for which you get extra entitlements as a US bound student than anywhere else. In Australia, there's taxation, there's accounting, there is social work, there is engineering, there's nursing. Similarly, in Canada, it's mostly similar. So I hope I'm able to put across how do you choose a course when you're especially localized. I mean, when you want to use a localized way of thinking that what do I pick when I go to Australia? What do I pick when I go to Canada? If you're open to that change, because most students aren't, because they're saying that my concern is I want to do accounting, and you tell me what's the best place to do accounting. And then there are some who say, I am flexible, but you have to tell me which country do I go in and which course do I pick. So skill migration list is especially good for those. Um, Now coming to the fourth point of choosing between the different, of choosing between diploma and degree is the affordability. On a general level, diplomas are going to be somewhere in the range of $8,000 to $12,000 a year. Diplomas can be 2 year long, so on an average, a diploma is going to be costing you 7 to 8 lakhs a year, going up to 10 lakhs a year, depending on the kind of college. And when it comes to a degree, that can go up until 30 lakhs. So starting from 15 to 20 to 30 lakhs. So diplomas are actually half the price. Actually half the price. So as a general summary, what did we discuss so far? Number one, the criteria. Diplomas can always be entered even after grade 10. So you just need a secondary qualification and you're good. Degrees can only be entered after you're done your grade 12th. So a 10 plus E diploma can even be done after 12th. Degrees can only be done after 12th. Point two, in Canada, for example, when there's a 4 year bachelor's degree rule, a lot of good schools in Canada still want a 4 year degree. Most of them have now waived that off and they're accepting 3 year. A diploma can pick you up even if you've got a 2 year associate degree and you want to do a diploma, you can. But largely, if you've got a three, I mean, associate degrees are not here. So in India, if you have a bachelor's degree of any sort, 3 years, you're still going to be making it to any PGDM that you largely have in Canada, Australia, anywhere in the world. Number two, in terms of career progression, if you want to be a research, aspirant, degrees make more sense because a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and then a PhD, you can't do a PG diploma and then go into a PhD. You need to have a master's degree. If you want to be in teaching, sometimes more often than not, you have to have a doctorate over time to grow. But a master's is like a prerequisite to teaching. A diploma never helps. However, if it's employability that you're seeking and it's not academia, then diplomas are just okay because the point is diplomas are highly skill intensive. They're very, 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 say, intensive when it comes to a specific specialized field like interior design, physiotherapy, nursing, electronic embedded systems. Um, let's say you pick up a diploma in healthcare or paramedical fields. So very highly skilled, specialized fields. So academically, degrees make more sense. Then it comes to the employability part. Degrees will fetch you more salaries. Diploma would fetch you lesser salaries. Degrees would fetch you beyond entry level jobs where you can go anywhere between mid level to high level, depending what's the background you're coming from. Diplomas would mostly be entry level to mid level, depending on the exact set of job role that you're actually. So if you're a field engineer and you have a PG diploma, a lot of it is determined by your skill set and experience more than what you've done. But if you're a fresh graduate moving into a postgraduate diploma in electrical engineering or XYZ, then you're just going to get an entry level job. So in Canada, I think a general figure for your salary as a diploma holder can be between 45 to 50,000 Canadian dollars a year. Degrees can take you about 70 to 80,000 dollars a year in about a year or two, right? And number four, like I mentioned, is the PR aspect. If you've done so, PR across the world always depends on the length of the course, then essentially the kind of course. So as long as it's a 2 year course, you get similar points. But when you become a master's student, when you graduate from master's, then you get extra points because of your general qualification that you're a master's degree holder. I think the other part that I really want to, and of course the cost, which I just covered. The other thing that I want to cover is that there's a lot of fluid, I mean, the fluid component. There's a lot of fluid component in a master's degree. If it's a 2 year master's degree, then 1 year down the line, you can switch the electives, you can switch the major, you can go from home thinking I'll do a finance major in an MBA, but you can end up doing IT management or an engineering management major um, in your MBA. Diplomas do not have that component. They don't. If you've picked up electrical engineering, so be it. You can't change that. Degrees have a lot of flexibility to it, a lot of fluidity to it, where you can switch all of that. I can take a few questions. So yeah, I think someone just asked me what does associate degree mean? What does a certificate mean? A certificate sometimes is an upskilling qualification. It's a good refresher on a specific topic. But then there are certain um, vocational certificates in Australia, like plumbing or electrician or XYZ, where these are very intensive, specially skilled certificates. And if you've got that for 1 year, you're okay, as long as it's a grad cert. Mostly graduate certificates in fields like AI or leadership or management or computer science certificate are essentially extracted from a larger master's level course. So I can extract 3 or 4 graduate certificates from an MBA. So if the MBA had 12 subjects, I can largely extract 5 subject-wide MBA or grad certificate, or a 3 subject or a 4 subject-wide grad certificate. Then you've got associate degrees that can be 2 years wide. Associate degrees can be done right out of high school, and these are 2 year degrees. They cover the general education in business or computing or arts. After an associate degree, you can pretty much enter into any bachelor's degree and complete the last 2 years and be awarded with the bachelor's degree in America or Canada. Associate degree concept is largely in US and Canada, where the first 2 years you can go to a community college or any decent university and you do the Associate of Arts degree, AA, or the Associate degree in Business or XYZ, and then you can move into any bachelor level course. I received certificate and diploma for Master of Arts of 2 years from Germany. Is it considered equivalent to a degree? Yes. A lot of parts of the world have a master's degree, but they just call that certificate a diploma, but that's essentially a master's level qualification. Here's how you measure that. Supposedly, if you've graduated from Germany and you've got a 120 ECTS master's qualification, it is a legitimate qualification of master's if it's 120 like European credits. Absolutely, yes. If it's less than 60 and you don't have a 300 ECTS qualification, so remember this, any 4 year bachelor's degree holder in Germany, from India or anywhere in Germany, would be labeled as a 240 ECTS student. And that student is allowed to do a 60 ECTS short course as long as they're coming with work experience, right? Similarly, if you're a 180 ECTS holder in India, which is mostly the case that you have a 3 year bachelor's degree, you can't really enter straight into a 60 ECTS program. You have to go into a 120 ECTS course. MBAs are normally never 120 ECTS, they're always going to be 90 ECTS. Reason being because the years of work experience are actually almost considered as 30 ECTS per year, or per say portion or segment of work experiences you've accrued over time. It's about 30 ECTS wide. So I hope I made sense. So I'm just trying to explain to you that in places where they call a certificate a diploma, it's essentially then demarcated in terms of ECTS, and that's going to help you decide, right? I hope that's clear to you. Minimum CGPA and IELTS score required to get a master's degree in Canada. Pooja, look, so in IELTS you need a 6 with a minimum 6 in each section to get into the student direct stream, SDS stream. So Canada has a new visa policy where you can get into an expedited visa track if you've got a student direct stream um, criteria. I mean, if you meet the student direct stream criteria, which essentially means you have the requisite IELTS score, you've paid the 1 year fee, and you've paid GIC, Guaranteed Investment Certificate, and the IELTS score is 6 that they need. And GPA, Pooja, is very interesting. So this is never defined, Pooja. Indian universities never work on, I mean, they seldom work on GPA, and it's not the case that their GPA is acceptable to Canadian or American schools. American schools have their own way of calculating CGPA out of 4. So essentially, GPA, I can never have one answer to GPA, but the normal GPA that a lot of US schools need can be 3 on 4, which is about 75% or 70%, 75 actually for the most part. A lot of Canadian schools can, or US schools for that matter, ask you for a 2.4, 2.8, 3.2, 3.6, depends on that. And then they have a converter that they use. Some of them use it in-house, some of them have external third-party vendors to calculate the GPA based on each university. So Indian universities have a grading mechanism, let's say in percentage, but they have A grade or B grade or C grade attached, and then they have requisite credits that they have for each subject. They multiply that on a grading point. So is it the UGC 10-point scale? Is it a specific university scale? And then they move it to the Canadian scale. But 75 to 80% is largely what most good universities demand. If someone has done his post-graduation without a certificate, does this degree matter? Mansoor, you'll have to explain me what does this mean. And if it was a 120 ECTS, you're going to be okay. You are a master's degree holder, 100% yes. Diploma type what, sir? I don't know, Vasu, what does that mean? But essentially, diploma type what would, so I don't know what do you mean by that, but there are three kinds of diplomas. One is a 10 plus 3 diploma after grade 10, um, which is your high school equivalent. So if you did a 12th grade or if you do a diploma, which is a 10 plus 3, you're essentially standing at the same platform. Um, then it comes to a PGDM, a postgraduate diploma. A postgraduate diploma can help you get entry level jobs, and especially skilled jobs, and you're going to be largely okay with that. Um, Level 5 is more so level 5, level 6 diplomas depend on. So New Zealand has have their own system, Australia has their own, UK has their own. So if someone has done it, so Mansoor, I still don't understand what does this mean. Does GMAT matter a lot when applying to universities in Canada for MBA? Actually, a lot of schools have different criteria. GMAT, yes, is an extremely important part of it. So there are every university in Canada, whenever they give an MBA, they've got certain way to assess your profile. One way is how many work experience here, how many years of work experience do you have? If there are three of, so work experience is a very important part. So diplomas actually don't need any of this. The diploma just means you've done your bachelor's degree, come on, come, you can just step in, hop on, and then you can just do a PGDM, and that's absolutely fine. They don't need work experience at all. More often than not, they will not. Very exceptionally, I may have seen that. For an MBA, work experience is not really work experience. You can't be saying, I used to sit at a shop and call that work experience. Work experience sometimes means progressional work experience. That I joined as this, then I became a team leader, then I became a manager. That is the kind of 3 year experience. So if that happens, GMAT gets waived off. Or you have a GMAT of 550 or 500 and plus. Only 550 and plus to maximum schools actually value. Then, or you were extremely brilliant in your Bachelor of Business or Bachelor of Commerce, which MBA then makes sense. So a lot of these things are increasingly becoming flexible. Admission criteria wise, diplomas are much more flexible. But in terms of the academic component, flexibility, degrees are a lot more flexible. You can still switch your specialization towards the end, right? I am interested in data science diploma. Yeah, that works fine. So DS is essentially a few languages, a few techniques. You've got Python, R, SQL, Advanced SQL, NoSQL, Hadoop, MongoDS. You've got some tools, and you've got certain methodology or technologies that you have to grow your expertise in, and you're largely okay with that. We've got shorter degrees, so upgrad. One of the things that upgrad really addresses is the fact that our degrees are 9 months or 12 months, and so we cut that down extremely to match the affordability of a diploma. So if you were to do with a US data science degree or a DS degree in UK, we would make you do a short diploma in India, immediately move you to a master's degree in US, get you a visa, get you a master's degree, and then your master's degree will give you a course waiver of at least 3 subjects because you've done a diploma with upgrad in India. So there's essentially a lot of things that we're trying to do as upgrad to make sure that you're more. Your higher ed is more affordable. Your higher ed is shorter, and your higher ed makes more sense. That less money, less length of the course, and you still get degree level jobs, right? I've completed a 10 plus 3 years diploma in civil engineering. You can pretty much go for a bachelor's degree at this point. You can't really do a master's, but you can do a bachelor's degree. In terms of profile building, if you were to apply for a civil engineering degree in US, where profile matters a lot, you will be easily accepted than a regular regular 12th grade holder, Rudranj. Or if you want to change a field, then we will accept you for a bachelor's degree in computer science. Or uh, we have degrees in engineering, we have degrees in artificial intelligence, we have degrees in analytics, so many different things. We've got degrees in engineering management, all of that. Uh, and if somebody has already completed his degree but without a certificate, Mansoor, so as long as you've got a bachelor's degree or a postgraduate degree, a certificate would mean that do you not have the actual degree with you? That's extremely inevitably important. So I can't really do much. Is any university offering dual courses like MS with MBA? Yes, a lot of universities, including upGrad. So what we do is not really an MS and MBA. So MS MBA would be called a dual degree, and a lot of universities now have that option. However, what upGrad does is we let you do a short certificate, advanced certificate in data science or cybersecurity or AI or computer science, and you can finally progress into a master's degree in Canada or the US or UK or France or Scotland now with upGrad. I hope I answered all of the questions. Could you guys now ask me as many questions as you'd like to ask? Also, I think one of the things that someone just asked me is that how many intakes are there? So in a degree, you would normally have two intakes, January and September, but a diploma normally has a lot of intakes. Sometimes they have rolling intakes. So what upGrad essentially does is we have so many graduate certificates and diplomas that start every month. And so while they start every month, as soon as you're done with one, as soon as you're done with a diploma, you can immediately progress into a full master's level degree with lesser courses because by virtue of your diploma with upGrad, you get a lot of course waivers in your master's degree. Uh, I'd love to. I want to settle in Australia. What should I choose, a degree or a diploma? So, length of course is more important. As long as it's a 2 year study period in Australia, it doesn't matter. You get the same PR points. But in terms of progression, that at a point where you want to do a doctorate, master's degree is better. Uh, from a viewpoint that you want more salary, degree is better. From a viewpoint that you have a lot of experience with you and you just need to enter Australia and start your career in Australia, then diplomas are just fine as long as you just need a gateway. Diplomas are going to be 50% less costly, and they're going to be quick and they're intensive in one field that you want to gain expertise in. Ah, you're a recent 2022 grad. I think you can study with upGrad. I think what makes the most amount of sense is that you study 1 year with us in upGrad right now, and you can move to Australia next year in July or September and do your remaining years, the last 2 years. So Australian bachelor's is a 3 year bachelor's. 1 year you do in India with us in upGrad, which is not going to be a diploma, it's just a simple first year in India at 2.5 lakhs instead of 25 lakhs in Australia. And then you do the last 2 years in Australia on campus because for PR purposes or even just to get a post-study work visa, you just need 2 years and not 3 years in Australia. How many years of educational gap is accepted for a master's in Canada? Pooja, so good question. Educational gap would mean from the last academic qualification to the aspirational degree that you now want to pursue, right? Essentially, not more than 4 years, pro provided in those 4 years you're doing a significant amount of work. But if it's absolutely empty and you did not do anything in those years, I think not more than 2 years at any cost. At any cost. But a degree like MBA, I don't think it makes sense for the most part that you do it right after, as long as the university is allowing you to and you feel the general cohort is of fresh graduates. Normally, everywhere across the world, the general cohort of a master's degree, or sorry, of an MBA is going to be experienced working professionals. And that would essentially mean that you get at least, even if you got 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years of gap, but you were doing ample work in those 8 years, progressional work experience that you started at a level and then you progressed into team leadership and then manager XYZ. So, I hope I answered you on each front. Which language should we learn, C++ or Python? I think C++ is always a good base, and then of course Python is now increasingly used more than ever. So I'm assuming, in my experience, it depends if you come from a computer science background now. But upGrad, for example, starts with Python with a little bit basic foundational understanding of C++. Do your backlogs affect chances of getting into a university in US for masters? 100% yes. 10 backlogs is usually the industrial standard in the US. You should normally stick anywhere between 4 to 10 backlogs, if at all. And then sometimes when you have 12 or 15 or 16, that depends that the university accepts you. Um, I mean, some universities accept you, but the top 100 or top 200 universities in the US normally don't accept you after 10 backlogs. Visa really is a question of so many more things than backlogs. I mean, 12 to 15 backlogs is not advisable, but even if it was advisable, uh, I would say that you need to have some grad level course to cover up for the shortcoming academically that you're coming to the visa officer with. So, for example, just to repeat myself, um, what upgrad does is for some students who have 2 or 3 or 4 backlogs, you get into some of the best universities with us. That we do a short Indian coursework online with onupgrad.com, and then you get some waivers of subjects against those, and then you move to the US or Canada or UK. But for students who've got more than 10 backlogs, we normally recommend that you do, as long as universities accept you, you do the graduate level course with us, the online coursework, but with a higher GPA. So your profile is balanced with work experience, higher GPA in your grad level course, even if you want to cover up the shortcomings of your bachelor's degree. But anywhere between after 15 backlogs is very risky, and US is going to be tricky for you. Is it possible to study in Germany without knowing German? 100% yes. I think we've got 3 universities in Germany now. The European University of Applied Sciences in Germany. Um, we've now got ISM, the International School of Management, which gives you an which gives you an MBA. UE, the European University of Applied Sciences, gives you an MS Data Science. And then we've got IU, International University of Applied Sciences, that gives you an MS in Computer Science, MIM, and MBA. And all of these three are uh, teaching in English, so you don't really need German. I have a master's degree from Osmani University in India. I've employed as a lecturer and worked there for 18 years. Returned if I feel the need to update myself. I think you should go in for a PhD, Manoj. I think that makes the most amount of sense. Or you can do a graduate certificate or a grad cert. Certificates, well, I think that's one thing. The other thing that I'd like to recommend you is that you can enroll yourself for executive ed. I think now more than ever, this culture of executive ed is really brimming. So that means you go to Harvard or any US Ivy League or UCLA or Michigan State or Purdue, Duke University. So a lot of them have executive ed courses, which are for someone like you who's had 15, 16, 18, 20 years of experience and they want to go for executive ranks. Am I eligible for BTech or post-graduation if I do diploma after 12th? For BTech, yes. For post-graduation, yes. But after 12th, right? After 10th, you can't. So if you after 10th, if you've done a 3-year bachelor's degree, uh, sorry, if after 10th, if you've done a 3-year diploma, you can't go for a master's. But for BTech, yes. In fact, if you've got a diploma 10 plus 3, some universities, when they give you BTech, they let you enter straight into second year. And so your first year is largely waived off. That's something that you can gain additional perspective on. Is there any other question that you have? I'd love to answer, and I hope I've given, I hope I've been able to add value. Um, to your time today. I pretty much answered everything that you need to know that how do I make the final decision. Also, I think one of the things that I mostly refrain from speaking, but I think when you apply for scholarships in India or anywhere else, it matters a lot if it's a degree, master's degree, or if it's a diploma. You get much more funding. You get much more scholarship for a master's degree than a diploma, always. Your funding chances are more. But of course, this is balanced by the fact that diplomas are always going to be much cheaper anyway. They're much affordable anyway. A 7.5 GPA, a good score in BBA to get into top US universities? Oh, 100%. I think 7.5 GPA is good GPA, and you can get into good grad schools in the US. I think that is it for me now. Um, at large, I think upGrad is a platform that you should largely explore if you're trying to find a diploma, if you're trying to find affordability, and still are in that dilemma that should I pick a degree, because upgrad just offers degrees, but what upgrad does is we give you a pathway from a PG diploma or a PG cert, like a PG certificate, and eventually get you into a degree. So you have best of both the worlds. You get a short diploma in India, you get that entry level understanding, and then we immediately move you to a master's degree, but with course waivers. So you're making a lateral entry or an advanced standing to a degree, um, and which is how we get you there. So upGrad is a platform where almost everything that you need from a diploma, ease of criteria, same PR points, more affordability, and at large, I think diploma is extremely good for specialized or to get you an advanced understanding of skill set. And the fact that diplomas are going to be shorter, so we make your degree duration shorter in onshore in the country. Yes, of course, the overall duration of your degree is going to be longer because with upgrad you have some pathway in India, some there. But I think a lot of students now feel that I want to spend lesser time in Canada because I don't have the money to bear my living expenses. I want to spend lesser time in Australia or US or England because I don't have the time, money to afford that. In those cases, 100% yes, because upgrad degrees are much, much, much shorter onshore. You cover a lot of portion from home. And so instead of 12 courses, you're just doing 9 courses. Instead of 10 courses, you're just doing 7 courses. So that's what we're increasingly doing now. I would request my colleague Arushi to put down a few course links. Does GATE score play any role while going abroad? Well, I don't think it does. I don't think it does. But remember that GMAT, GRE are increasingly very contingent to each university, but internationally, I think GRE has a better role to play than anywhere else, right? Sorry, than any other exam. While chilling upgrade, would we lose our years in abroad, which might affect the PR? No, 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 100%. No, 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 no. So for Canada, you don't. You still get a full 3-year PGWP because you're doing a 2-year master's. It's essentially a 2-year master's. In US, the minimum time you need to complete onshore studies is 9 months, where you complete 2 terms, and upgrad still gives you that. But normal US degrees can go up to 18 months. We cut that into half. You still get the PR. Everybody, all our students who are there still get the same OPT, the 3-year work visa. In UK, 100% yes, because your CAS, the confirmation of acceptance for studies, is still more than 12 months. You get a GIR for 2 years. In every country, we make sure that you do the minimum requisite length of studies, which never affects your PR. So you're 100% safe there. I've done mechanical engineering and want to pursue a master's in cinematography and editing. Should look in India, foreign countries. I think cinematography is something you can definitely look at in the UK. You can definitely look at Europe, and you can definitely look at the US. Scholarships are doable. Scholarships depend on merit. Scholarships depend on financial need, or scholarship depend on your profile. That what additional experience do you have? But I think for someone who's just jumping from one extreme end to another extreme end, mostly it's a question of would you even be admitted? So that's the more important question in scholarship. Scholarships are 100% yes. I think diplomas have lesser chances of scholarship, degrees have more chances of scholarship. So scholarships depend on a lot of things that are part of the admission criteria, Nakul. And largely, I think if you've got a good profile, then you can pretty much get a good scholarship. But I think what that also depends on, what that also matters. I mean, what also matters is if you still have time, I'd say you spend a year in India or two in India and then build that experience and then apply abroad. I think that makes more sense. I have a compartment in 12th, but I've completed my bachelor's in finance. Does that affect my chance to get into a US university? I'm just anticipating. How did you get into bachelor's if you have a compartment in 12th? I'm assuming you didn't reappear, but you were still pass, right? Um, Actually, no, US universities look at your grades in 12th, but that's only for relevant subjects. So I want to know which subject in 12th did you get a compartment in, and how relevant it is to your final master's degree that you want. For bachelor's, if you've got a good grade, I think 12th is something that you can largely overshadow or overlook. But I can't have a definite answer to it. I think it's never a good sign to be weak academically and then apply for the US. But a lot of it depends on which subject is it. Like if it was Sanskrit, then it doesn't really matter. But if it was mathematics and you're going for a STEM degree, wow, that's a red flag right there, right? So these things matter. In economics was compartment. And which course do you want to go? So if you scored a compartment in economics, but you want to go now for an engineering course and you have bachelor's degrees in engineering and you have a good 6.5, 7.5, 8 GPA, you're fine. Bachelor life science subject 3 year master's possible new scholarship. So life sciences is good for almost any country. And scholarship depends on grade 12. Scholarships depend on profile, all of these things. It's been an absolute honor for me to address you guys. I'm just putting down my email address, and I would love to hear from you for any questions that you may have. My name is Prithvineet.singh at upgrad.com. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. This is how my LinkedIn would look like. This is my LinkedIn URL. You can always message me on LinkedIn as well and ask me anything that you would like to ask me. I wish you guys good luck and thank you for being a great audience. Thank you very much, everybody. You can always email me. And my colleague Arushi has put down the message where you can pretty much explore our courses. Irfan wants to know what's the maximum number of backlogs allowed to apply for an MA degree in Canada. Canada actually has a lot of limit on backlogs as long as they're healthy. I mean, 10, let's say 2 or 3 in a year is fine as long as your final GPA is achieved, like 7.5 or 8, which they want. And uh, essentially, I think in terms of, so look, it also depends that, let's see, diploma has no such criteria for backlogs and all, but masters is very dependent on which degree are you going for. If it's, sorry, which university or HEI, higher education institution you're going for. So if it's the University of Toronto and UBC, then a lot of it, I mean, backlogs are a huge issue. But at the end of the day, as long as you've got 60% or 70%, you're fine. Backlogs are not really much big of an issue. Like I said, I think backlogs are also very subjective. It depends on which subject you have backlog in and how relevant is that to your study period. And I think somewhere the consistency is very much in place. So have I been consistently dropping in my score each year? Then that's a bad sign. It signals that I'm not academically very invested. Right? But if I had a backlog or two in certain subjects all throughout 4 years, but at the end I covered up in one reattempt and I finally have a good GPA, then it's pretty much okay. But I think any country after 10 backlogs is a red flag. So keep that in mind. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope I answered you. For any bachelor's related or master's related doubts, you can always ask me. upGrad has great courses in Germany that are under 10 lakhs for bachelor's. We've got courses in Australia, Canada, US that are somewhere between 20 to 30 to 40 lakhs. Depending, Canada is going to be as cheap as 20 lakhs. Australia is going to be 25, 30 lakhs. US is 40 lakhs and plus. but we've essentially got all of these courses with us, and pretty much we can help you start in India and then eventually move in the second year on a lateral entry or an advanced standing basis. I hope I could answer your questions. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been a pleasure addressing you guys. Thank you. Have a great Saturday.